Hello and welcome to Bastionland Broadcasting, where we are not live and we are not really back. This is going to be a funny one because today I had a bit of a situation where I am now looking at the clock and I have about an hour until I need to be somewhere. Well, need to leave the house rather. And in that time, I was hoping to write a blog post, and I had a few things going around, but I was distracted because I've been tinkering away on this Wargame system that no one cares about, that I've been writing about a little bit on the blog, that uses these tiny little 2mm miniatures. If you can see red paint on my hands, that's because I've just finished painting them up. And I really wanted to test it before I go out tonight. So what I decided to do is, why couldn't we combine the two? So rather than having a blog post this week, we've got a video. And that video is going to be playtesting this system. So let's jump to it. We're waking up in our log cabin. I thought, just because this is an absolutely cynical way of like doing the thing I want rather than the thing I have to do, that doesn't mean we can't have a good time. We're waking up in our Wargame playtesting cabin, because over here we have a game setup, or at least the start of a game setup. Now, if you've not been following the blog, the game that I'm talking about, the whole root of this game was that I bought some tiny little 2mm scale, I should have brought them up with me, but they're still drying, tiny little 2mm scale miniatures in a kind of Napoleonic horse and musket era. And I wanted to try and make a war game that you can fit into a little plastic box. So I've got like these little, not quite a tackle box. It's used for like sorting beads and jewelry parts by my partner, and I've stolen it because there was one going free, and I thought I will take that and I'll fill it with miniatures. And I wanted to try and have like what felt like a big scale war game in a little tiny box. And there were some games that already did that. Notably, the game that this is basically it's a hack of a game called 2x2 Napoleonics, but it keeps straying away. So it's now in that awkward hack region where like it's not compatible with that, and it's different enough that you're almost better coming to it like from scratch. But I did want to sort of give credit where credit's due. 2x2 Napoleonics, which was originally by Rod Humble and others, is the credits on that one. So I wanted to give credit where credit is due on that. Now, I've said some of like the goals of the system. It's just to make something very simple and something very simple that works with very small miniatures, but has the feel of a big battle. And 2x2 Napoleonics already did a lot of what I wanted it to do. It was like 95% the perfect system for what I wanted. But of course, I had to mess with it. And particularly, I wanted to strip away. There were quite a few like tables of like modifiers for the actions that you do. So if you're shooting a target, there would be like maybe a dozen +1, -1, +2, -2 to your roll that you have to take into account. And it's, as far as war games go, this was quite a simple list, and it was all quite intuitive. But I thought, can we get rid of that? Can we just have it be that you don't need to remember that? Much like I did with the Doomed, I wanted it to be like one thing for each type of roll. So there is one way to get the edge on each type of roll. So for example, if you're shooting and you're shooting at cavalry, you'll get the edge, which is basically like you get to roll an extra die and keep the higher die. Anyway, I'm getting caught up in the weeds because this is a very unplanned stream. But I want it to be a kind of here's what it's like to do a playtest of something in this kind of early stage. And I'm cheating slightly because even though it is in the early stage, it's based off something that is an existing game. It doesn't seem to be a game that's got like a massive amount of support out there. It seems to be something that kind of got put out and hasn't really had much extra stuff added to it. So I'm interested to see if anybody has played that, if they've got any thoughts as to how this is going. So, the battle for today. We have the Blue Army, who, because I'm using Napoleonic bits here, they are French, but for the sake of simplicity, they are going to be blue. They are the blue army. And over here we have the red army. Not that red army. Obviously here they are British, but we're going to be just using the red army here. Each army is made up of these little stands, and if I was doing this properly like I did on the table, the reason this is called, so if the original was 2x2 wargaming, this is 1x1 wargaming, because the bases should be 1 inch square. These are not quite square, but it doesn't really matter. But the bases I've used for my actual miniatures are 1 inch by 1 inch. So we've got some infantry, we've got some elite cavalry, and we've got some elite infantry. We've got an HQ, and we have a couple of pieces of field artillery. And some of the red army are already deployed because of the scenario. I'm not going to go over it too much, but this is kind of the standard scenario setup that you get with 2x2 Napoleonics. So I kind of lifted that straight from there. So some of the red are going to start on the field already. Likewise, some of the blue are going to start on the field already. They've got some line cavalry, field artillery, HQ. And this is the rest of the blue army. Now, we're meant to be doing this on a kind of 24 by 24 inch battlefield. But really what we're going to do is we're going to say that these rivers and these forests are kind of the edge of the board. So we're going to treat these as if that was the edge of the board. You can't go out of there, and reinforcement's going to come on from there. Before the game, you set up these reinforcement points, so the attacker gets 1 on their rear and 1 on the enemy flank. And the defender, who are blue are the defenders, they get 2 on their flank. This is where your rest of your units are going to come on. And something that's kind of interesting about this game is you have to set your reinforcements. You have to set your reinforcements like straight away. You have to say, this is who I want to come on from here in this order. So we're going to do like a bit of a queue. So, you know, I'm not going to agonize over it too much, but we're going to have maybe our elite guys are going to come on at the flank, which is a little bit risky, you know, because they might not actually make it onto the battlefield. For reasons that you'll see, it is kind of harder to come on this side. Maybe we'll have an HQ come on here. We probably want them to come on a little bit earlier because the HQ is very important. Do we want a cannon to come on from here? It's kind of stupid, but I like it. So we're going to have a cannon in there as well. Meanwhile, back here, we're going to get some more artillery on our elite infantry, elite cavalry, and then just our line infantry. So in the original 2x2 Wargames, part of the reason that I really liked it is it had a very focused design philosophy around it. The original author spoke about 2 core things they really wanted to simulate that he felt were not necessarily always represented well in Wargames, especially kind of this Napoleonic horse and musket era. One is a concept of the evolving battlefield. So for many campaigns in that kind of era, the author said that, you know, that there weren't very many battles that were these kind of pitched battles where everyone lines up and fights. More often than that, forces were very mobile and would kind of move to where they needed to be on a grand scale, which meant on any given battlefield you had armies kind of arriving as the battle was happening. So that's why this whole kind of, you only start with a quarter of your army on the board, everyone else is going to come on a bit later. I'll get to what the other main design goal of that game was shortly, but we'll get our blue reinforcements lined up. So we'll put some more artillery. We'll probably like some more cavalry up here. And our elites, and then I think these are all just line infantry, so they can just come on whenever they're ready, really. And you know, you can put all of them on one reinforcement point if you really wanted to. I don't know, there might be a logic behind that at some point, but the fact is, it's kind of, I don't know how likely it is. We'll look at how it works out in practice, but there's a chance that like a lot of these units just won't show up, which I do quite like. So we're set up. I've avoided explaining the rules because I wanted to just kind of walk through the first couple of turns, and hopefully that'll kind of explain what the rules are, and it will help me kind of internalize them as this is literally the first time I've tested out this system. So the turn is split into 5 phases technically. So if you can see on the sequence of play, first of all rolls are 1d6 unless you have an edge. If you have an edge, you roll 2d6 and keep the highest. Other than that, you're just rolling a d6. There's no +1s or -1s ever. You're literally always either rolling 1d6 or rolling 2d6 and keeping the highest if you have an edge. And that's what I wanted to try and do. I wanted to not have all those +2s, -1s here and there that stack up. I wanted it to just be you're either doing it normally or you're doing it with the edge. So, sequence of play. We have 5 phases. First phase is the active player. So we're going to say, I can't remember who's meant to go first. Let's look at the scenario. Did I include that? No, I didn't say who goes first. I would imagine that the defender goes first because it kind of makes sense. Well, you know, there's arguments both ways. But for our example, we're going to have the defenders go first. So, first phase is check reinforcements. So if we go over to the middle column where it says reinforcements, reinforcement units are set aside in the order they'll arrive. And what you do is you roll for each of your reinforcement points on the board. On a 4+, the next unit arrives on the board. And to get an edge on that roll, we have to have more allies than enemies within 3 inches of that reinforcement point. So at the moment, we don't have anyone within 3 inches of either of our reinforcement points. So we could have like left a unit back here to sort of help our reinforcements arrive, which might have been quite clever now I think about it, but we didn't. So we're going to need to, we're going to need to roll a 4+ for either of these to arrive. So we'll do this one first. So they will arrive, and then we'll do this one. They will not. So our cannon arrives. So what do we do? You place the unit on the board edge, with it anywhere within 3 inches of the reinforcement point, and then they move as normal. So when we're moving, in fact, let's just decide where we're putting them first. I think let's put them like here. I will explain terrain in a little bit, but these fields are nothing. We don't need to worry about these like crop fields. So we've had 1 unit arrive. This cavalry did not arrive, but our artillery is there. Movement phase. When you're moving units, they can move in any direction, and then you can set their facing at the end of the movement. So you don't need to... Moving only really affects who you can shoot. So units can shoot forward in like a 90-degree arc out of their front. But in terms of movement, you don't need to worry about facing for movement. It doesn't cost you any movement to turn around, and you can move in any direction. So units have a different movement rate based on what they are. So you can see this list down the left. We don't have any horse artillery, but we have field artillery, which are going to move 2 inches. So we'll move the field artillery straight away. So we'd like to obviously get this guy up on this hill, but it's going to be a bit of a slog. So we'll go forward the full 2. And likewise, these guys will move forward 2 as well. Our HQ can move 6, but we kind of want to keep them out of trouble. And our line cavalry can move 4 inches. So this is why I thought we could put them over here, so that they're interfering with this reinforcement point. So we've got cavalry next to this reinforcement point, so it's going to be harder for these reinforcements to arrive on the board because we've got a unit here. That was my master plan. So everyone's moved. Then the active player rallies. So other than being outright destroyed, there's 2 statuses that can affect a unit. And we're going to be using smoke counters. I've made some nice little smoke counters out of cotton wool for my game in a box. But for this tabletop simulator version, we're just going to use this block of smoke. A unit can be pinned. And to do that, you put a unit of smoke next to it. And if a unit is pinned, it can't move. And that's it. The unit can also be disrupted. And we're going to use smoke on top of it to signal when it's disrupted. And if a unit is disrupted, it can't move and it can't fire. And that's it. Simple. The other things that might happen to a unit is they might be forced to retreat, which means they just move away from their attacker. And they get destroyed if they get caught. And that's it. Yeah, if you're pinned or disrupted, the only movement you can do is if you're retreating, but you can still turn to face the right way. So we don't need to rally, I should say. So the reason we were looking at that is to get rid of those disruption or pinned counters. What you have to do is you have to rally, which requires having an HQ within 6 inches. So if you imagine like a 6-inch radius bubble around this HQ unit, any unit that is within that range can attempt to rally. And again, it's just a straight roll, but if the unit is elite, it will have an edge on that roll. So that's why your elite infantry and your elite cavalry are really good, because if they get pinned or disrupted, they're able to sort themselves out much more easily. Just notice all of these guys are facing the wrong way, so we'll rotate them. No, they're not. They were the right way. It was the elites were facing the wrong way. Or am I talking nonsense? It's, you know what? It's still got the live feeling, hasn't it? This video, even though it's recorded. The flag is at the back. That's what's throwing me off. So we've done our reinforcement. We've done our move. We've done our rallying, and then this is straight out of 2x2 Wargame, so I can't take any credit for this. Sorry, 2x2 Napoleonics. This rule is straight out of that. The other player fires. So if I'd moved within range of any enemies, or even if I charged into contact with them, the enemy would then get a chance to fire. So you fire on the other player's turn, which is interesting because it means if you move a unit into firing range with a unit that can fire back, they are going to get to fire first. Which sounds really, really bad, but firing is more about pinning and disrupting the enemy. It's very difficult. In fact, it's outright impossible, I should say. It's impossible to outright destroy a unit with shooting. The best you're going to do is disrupt that unit, which opens up the lane for an assault. And assaulting is kind of hand-to-hand melee, short-range combat. It includes all that charging in stuff. So it really is a game about using fire to disrupt the enemy and pin them in place and get them disrupted, and then charge in and destroy them with an assault. So we don't have any enemies in range because the ranges in this game are super short, and these are taken straight from 2x2 Napoleonics again. The only units on HQ and cavalry can't shoot at all, even if they do have guns, like they're dragoons or something. The idea is that they would still primarily fight in a kind of assault manner, so they're not sort of standing back and shooting and softening up the target. They're moving in to make these decisive short-range point-blank attacks. So infantry can shoot 1 inch, which is ridiculous, but you'll see why it makes sense in a minute. Artillery can shoot 8 inches. So this artillery unit, if we weren't behind this crest of this hill, you could shoot this far. But these infantry units back here, even though they've got muskets, they can only shoot 1 inch. So really, shooting is less about lining up like firing lanes and more about when you move to engage a unit, you're probably choosing whether to assault or just to move into shooting range and shoot. Now, I was skeptical. I immediately wanted to like increase it to at least like 2 inches because 1 inch is so short for a range to it's just fiddly as well. But I thought, no, I'm going to stick with it, and I want to try it by the book of the original game because there's a lot that I like about the original game here. That's why I want to kind of tweak it and mess with it, because there's very few games that I read where it kind of clicks like that and immediately I really want to work with it. 1 Hour Wargames was the one that really grabbed me in that sense. Weirdly, Battletech did it, so it's not just a case of like things being very simple. Some games just really click with me. But I thought the 1 inch thing sounds weird, but we'll stick with it. Okay, so other player fires, there's no one in range, and then we would do any assaults until no units are in contact. So the first turns are obviously going to be about bringing on the enforcements and moving around. So let's keep the pace up. So red, we don't have any units within 3 inches of this, and we don't have more. So basically, we haven't got the edge on either of these reinforcement rolls. So we'll roll for our flank and our rear. So our flank got 5+, so this unit will be coming on. Our rear got 3+, so this artillery is obviously slowing everyone else down. So we have some elite infantry. We're going to bring them on. It's a little bit scary. We're going to put them there for now, and then we'll worry about them in the movement phase, which is now. So where do we want to go? What we don't want to do is I don't want to end up getting charged by this cavalry and pushed off the edge of the board, because if you get pushed back off the edge of the board, then obviously you are out. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to move within 1 inch of this cavalry so I can shoot them, but also I mean, we could just charge them. No, shooting is better because cavalry are bad against shooting. So what movement are we dealing with? Infantry move 3 inches. And all infantry at the same, so light infantry, line infantry, and elite infantry, their basic move and range stuff is the same, and they all count as infantry. But elite and light come up as little bits in some of the combat results, which you'll see shortly, and some of the movement rules. And it's a fine line to walk there, because I do hate games where you don't know why a unit is special until you dig into a certain section, and then you realise, oh, this is why elite infantry are interesting, because it's hidden away in the rallying rules or something. And that's a problem when it's a big book, but, you know, I figured since this is literally a sheet of A4, which I have printed as A5 in my little box, I figure it's fine. It doesn't really matter where it is in here, because it's all, like, at a glance. So let's not overthink it. Let's move like here, face this way, and we're within 1 inch of the cavalry. So we're putting it on them as to what they're gonna do. And then down here, we're just gonna move all this line infantry forward 3 inches, and our HQ will travel behind them. Now rallying, there's no one left to rally. And then the other player shoots. So even though I've moved these guys into range, it's the blue side that again the opportunity to shoot. And as we said before, these cavalry can't shoot. Cavalry don't have a ranged attack at all. Now, if this field artillery is facing this way, they could nearly shoot at this infantry, but like I said, they can only shoot out of their forward arc. So nothing's going to happen in the shooting phase. And finally, the assault phase, we've not got anyone in base-to-base contact. So that's that. Now, back to blue. Reinforcements. Now, we do have a unit within 3 inches of this one. So because we have more allies than enemies within 3 inches, this one will roll with the edge, which is roll both and take the highest. So the highest is 4, so that's a pass. So we can bring on our next unit. And this one is just a straight d6 because there's no units at all within range. So there you go, the cavalry, come on. Okay, now it's movement. So we could charge this unit of elite infantry, but here's where things get tricky. Cavalry do have an advantage in melee, in assaults, I should say. You know what? To test out the rules and to... I thought about, if I was playing this to win, I would probably like move this line cavalry away and like retreat. But we're testing this game, so let's do the stupid thing. And we're going to charge in this unit of cavalry. So cavalry can move 4 inches. 4 or 5, I'm between those two numbers, but at the moment it's 4. And we are now in base-to-base contact with this unit of infantry on their front arc. And this is a very stupid thing to do, but we're doing it for the sake of the playtest. We'll move this artillery. Was it 2 or 3 inches that these guys can move? 2 inches. Oof. And then, you know what? Where were they? Were they like here? I think we could have got to like here, and then we're actually going to turn. Because, oh no, they're getting kind of close. But it would be nice to be able to shoot at this unit of elite infantry here, if need be. Well, we'll do that. And then our HQ can move 6. So let's go... Can we go between these two? So this way, the artillery and the cavalry are both within 6 inches of the HQ, so the HQ can try and rally them if they get into trouble. And here we go, we've got another unit of cavalry. They can come up 4 inches. We're very focused in on this front here. And these infantry can move 3 inches. These will move up with the artillery, and this artillery will move... I don't think I've moved these, have I? These can move 2 inches there. And we're still quite a bit out of range here, and this isn't an ideal firing lane with this hill blocking our view. But there we go. While we're on movement, I said that I wanted to put a lot of the sort of unit differentiation in the game itself, so in the actual resolution tables and in the movement effects table. So if you look at the move section at the bottom of the middle paragraph, you can see that units moving along a road move an extra inch for free. Woods and other units can only be passed through by light units. Now, we don't have any light infantry or light cavalry in this battle, but if we did, they could move through woods and they could move through other units. But because we don't, none of our units can enter the woods and none of our units can interpenetrate each other. It's such a strange word. I hate having to say it. Like I hate that I've had to learn this word purely for wargaming. Interpenetrate. It's horrible. So town, which is any kind of built-up area, only infantry can enter it. And streams, which we do have some streams, they block charging moves, retreats, and pursuits. So you can do some nice things where if you're fighting a unit and there's a stream behind them and they run away, if they retreat towards the stream, they won't be able to go any further, so they'll stop, meaning that your unit can catch them more easily and destroy them. So, what have we done while I've been rambling on? I was talking about terrain, and that's all we need to know about terrain for now. It is now, that's all the moves, so now it's the rally phase. That's right, I keep forgetting about the rally phase because we've not got anything to rally, so we don't need to worry about that. We now have the other player fires, so the red player is going to fire. Now, even though they are in base-to-base contact here, these infantry can fire at these cavalry because they're in their front arc. So this is another reason why there's no bonus for charging units in the flank or the rear, but the reason that you want to do that is so they can't shoot you on the way in. So if you have this cavalry and you charge in the rear, it's a much safer thing to do against infantry because they can't shoot at you. And I prefer those kind of things. I prefer those kind of absolute benefits and those kind of almost like binary things rather than saying, oh, if you charge in the rear, you get a +2 to your attack. Because that, it feels a little bit cold, whereas I like the actual reasoning of like, well, the reason that you would charge him in the rear is this reason, because you won't be facing a load of bullets on the way in. So, elite infantry are shooting at line cavalry. Normally you would roll just 1 die each. I've got these on the wrong side. So we've got blue and red. Normally you would roll 1 die each. But with firing I should say, I'll just go through them quickly. So like we said, it's a front 90-degree arc only. There's no minimum range. Infantry have a range of 1 inch. Units and woods block line of sight. Hills allow the attacker to see over the units below. And towns and hills can be fired into but not through. So if you can shoot someone who's in the town, you can't shoot someone who's the other side of town. And the way to get an edge, there's only one modifier to firing, and that edge is if the target is cavalry, because they are vulnerable to fire. And then what we're going to do is we're going to roll the dice. In this case, red is going to roll with an edge, so they'll roll 2, and blue will roll 1. If it's a draw, then we can see, normally, if the defender was in town, the defender would win, otherwise the attacker wins. So we're not defending a town, so if it's a draw, red is going to win. And whichever side wins, the other side is pinned. I'll come back to that. But if the attacker doubles the defender's score, the defender is disrupted. Now, you might think it's odd that the attacker can become pinned. In 2x2 Napoleonics, the other thing that he really wanted to get across was this idea of a concept called the glue of war, which was a product of this kind of era of warfare where, because of like gun smoke and because of general like friction on the battlefield, once a unit of infantry started firing, there was apparently a habit for them to just keep firing, because you couldn't necessarily, when you fire, you're getting gun smoke, so your visibility is impaired, and it's hard to receive orders while you're in that kind of firing mode. So in 2x2 Napoleonics, a unit becomes pinned as soon as it starts to fire. But in here, I just wanted to include it in the combat results table instead and have it as a possibility. So the attacker isn't always pinned, but the attacker can become pinned if they fire as a result of this. So red is rolling with an edge over blue. We've got an upset. Blue rolls a 6, red rolls a 5. So that means the winner is blue, so red is going to be pinned. So we've got our first pinned unit of the day. And more importantly, this stupid charge has paid off. So because they're pinned, we'll put the smoke next to them, not on top of them. So this unit now can't move. They're firing their guns and they're stuck in place. And this might... This probably won't be important in this scenario, but we'll see. So that was the shooting. Now we move back to blue and we can resolve assaults. And we have an assault right here. We have cavalry assaulting infantry. So below the fire results table, we've got assault. So an assault happens when you've got contact on any facing. So you can fight on your left, right, back, whatever. Because an individual base in this game is assumed to be like 100 men in like a company. Company-ish kind of size. The idea is that when you're getting into this close combat, that the flank and stuff isn't as important once the assault actually starts. It is important for avoiding that fire, like I said, but once the assault starts, you're able to kind of direct your men in the right direction. So the edge here would be if the enemy is either disrupted or they are a light unit. Now we've got no light units in this game, so we can forget that. So the edge is only going to come into an assault if the enemy is already disrupted. And this is why you'll want to soften them up with fire before you can charge in. Because remember, disrupted units can't shoot. So the classic strategy would be you shoot the infantry until they are disrupted, and then you charge in with the cavalry, knowing that they're not going to get shot because the enemy is disrupted, and then your cavalry is going to get an edge because the enemy is disrupted when they assault. And in assaults, cavalry who are charging break ties. So if it's a draw, charging cavalry wins. If neither side is charging cavalry, then the defender wins. And here, it's a similar results table to the fire table, but it's more. You get more effect. So if you win the roll, the enemy will retreat and become disrupted, and if you double the loser, then the enemy is broken. But the downside is that can go both ways. So shooting is relatively low risk if the enemy can't shoot back, but assaulting is always going to be risky. So let's do it. We've got cavalry versus infantry. Neither side is disrupted, so neither side gets the edge. It's just a straight one-on-one roll. We've got a tie. And what did I say breaks ties? Charging cavalry. So this thing that I said was a stupid plan, it's paying off. So even though this unit is pinned, we know that pinned units can retreat if forced. So when you retreat, what happens is you move away. It's a full move away from the attacker. So for infantry, that's going to be 3 inches. And they are still pinned. But I think this is all going to be kind of moot because this cavalry can pursue. And if you can pursue and overtake the fleeing unit, then they are destroyed. So this unit of elite infantry are destroyed as the cavalry chase them down. So who was I to critique this this plan? This cavalry have done really well, and it would have been a different story if the shooting from the infantry had pinned this cavalry. They wouldn't be able to pursue, so they would have been able to get away. And if this was infantry rather than cavalry, they wouldn't be able to overtake the infantry as they were chasing them. So that is how the game works. And then let's get to the end of turn. That was the assault. So now it would go back to red. Let's do one more turn and then we'll call it a day. So this unit now, yeah, these reinforcements are going to need 4+. They're both going to need 4+. So we'll do the flank and the rear. No one's coming on this flank now after seeing that, but the artillery will come on the rear. Would like to do some shooting if I can, and we will be able to do. No, we won't need to because they're dead. Sorry. We're not going to need to do much shooting because the red. Oh no, we've done shooting. We've done an assault. We haven't done any rallying. So I will do a very quick example. Let's say that this cavalry had become pinned somehow. Then all you would do in the rally phase is if they are within 6 inches of their HQ, they can attempt to rally. If they are elite, they have an edge, but they're not. So they're just going to roll a single die. 3 means they cannot rally. So they remain pinned. So when a unit becomes pinned or disruptive, 4+ sounds great, but you can very easily roll like 2 or 3 failures. So a unit can be pinned in place for like a significant part of the battle. And remember, if, let's say this unit over here was pinned, they are, because there's no HQ within range, these wouldn't be able to rally at all. So you'd need to either run this HQ over into range, or hope you've got a second HQ somewhere, which blue does not actually in this battle, that you can have HQs spread across the board to give that kind of cover. So that is 1x1 Wargames. I hope this has been something. I know that this is not what I would normally do for my kind of weekly thing, but I haven't been able to do this week, and I thought let's do something a bit different. I hope it's been useful. If you do want to check out One by One Napoleonics, no, I keep calling it different names. It's just called a One by One Wargame at the minute. So if you do want to check out One by One Wargame, it's bit.ly/1x1 Wargame. It will also be linked in the description of this video and on my blog, which is, as always, bastionland.com. And as always, if you want to support what's going on over here, you can go to patreon.com/bastionland. And if you want to stay up to date with everything, the Substack is, I can't remember the address. Is it substack.com/bastionland, or is it bastionland.substack.com? Take your pick and try it. The other one probably won't work. So apologies that it's all a bit of a shambles today. I hope it's been useful. And until next time, it's goodbye for now.